What's up, Ravens flock? I hope everybody's enjoying their holiday weekend, trying to get out the best they can without breaking any coronavirus violations. This episode, we're going to talk about the coronavirus, what that means to Ravens football, and what could it look like if and when we have football and the stadium situation. Just found out Bleacher Report ran an article that the NFL is going full steam ahead, that they anticipate full stadiums unless the medical community recommends something different. So that's good news. The NFL wants those stadiums full, and they need the stadiums full. They need that revenue. What I was thinking about earlier, can we live without football for a season? The answer is obviously, it's not obvious. Yes, we could live without football. But the bigger impact is if we don't have football, then that means we don't have a lot of other things, and it means we're not getting back to normal. When we don't get back to normal, the economy is going to struggle. So football is really a barometer that we need to have in place, and hopefully everything's going well, that'll lead to getting back to normal. I was really hoping that the Major League Baseball, the players union and the owners could get this hashed out. I wanted them to get on the field, and the reason why, I want them to get out and be the guinea pig for the NFL. Find out what works, what doesn't work, so that the NFL can just sit back and watch and learn from it and make adjustments prior to the season starting. So what's the season going to look like without football? Honestly, if we don't have football in Baltimore, then I'm going to have to get Cleveland Browns fans on here to find out what life is like without football, because I can't imagine. I couldn't fathom it. How's it going to impact the smaller market teams like the London Jaguars? They already have issues filling the stadium. You've got the LA, San Diego, Monterey, Southern California Chargers that are getting ready to share the new stadium with the Rams. How are they going to fill that? So and then you got the Raider Spooky Dome, or whatever, the black hole, or I don't know, the blackness in the desert. How's that going to be affected? Because they need to fill that as well. So I want to go through the different phases of the day and kind of what game day is going to feel like with this virus, if it's still around and still affecting us once the season starts. So one of the first things that comes to mind is getting to and from the games. A lot of people use different methods to get to the games and where they park. For me, for example, we park at the casino, and it just works out good for us. It's a little pricey, $50 or something like that. But there's pros and cons to it. That $50 is expensive. My mother's getting a little bit older, so that walk kind of hurts a little bit. Sometimes we'll actually just take a taxi from there just to get her over to the game day experience. The light rail, that's the one where once again, we start getting into this murky water. The light rail's packed on Ravens game day. I mean, it's like a sausage fest in there. People rubbing up against each other, 6 foot's out the window, which reminds me of a story. About 5 or 6 years ago, it was opening day for the Orioles. We get in this packed light rail, and we started out at Cromwell at the very end, and we were like 2 stops in, and we're packed. There's no room. The doors open up. I'm up in the middle of the very middle of the light rail with my son. He had a friend and his father that were right by the sliding doors. Sliding doors open, and these 2 crackheads, and I think they were father-son crackhead. It's pretty funny. They go to get in, and they kind of push the kid back to make room, and the father said something to, I guess, Papa Crackhead. He said this like 30 times about this is Baltimore, and I looked at my son, I was like, oh, we're getting a geography lesson from a crackhead. So finally the door's shut. Friend's father looks in the window and drops a big FU bomb out the window to Crackhead and son. Well, doors were closed. All of a sudden, the doors opened back up. nobody was talking. It was like the wind just went sucking right out of the light rail, and I was like, oh boy, here we go. Well, good news is Crackhead and Son went back pursuing their their addictions, and nothing happened. But it's a pretty funny story there. But once again, it was packed from Cromwell all the way in. And so, what's that going to be like with the game day experience? Are they going to have light rail? And this is just the early parts of the day that we have to talk about that could be affected. So, assuming that we do have football and there's full stadiums, then we're going to assume that the light rail's running and everything's well. But it may not be. It may be limited occupancy. I don't know how they're going to police that. Then that leads us to, okay, so you're there. What are you going to do? And this one's the one that I'm really concerned about, is the tailgate experience. I love tailgating at the Ravens games, and I've been to the Firehouse, I've been to Jimmy Seafood, and there's another Baltimore something down party that's over in one of the lots. I've been to that as well. They're all great times, great food, a lot of fun. Us personally, we love hanging out at Ravenswalk. It's affordable, and there's a lot of stuff going on there, a lot to do. That's where we hang out. So with the coronavirus, how's that going to affect that with that many, the large masses of people together? And depending on what phase we're in when football starts, that may be affected, and that's really going to suck if we don't have a tailgate experience. What it could mean is if there's no mass tailgates, then I'm sure they're going to allow the smaller ones to go in the lots prior to the game. So that's going to be a big one that I'm going to be monitoring, and that's going to hurt if that gets affected. After that, then you're really looking at entering the stadium, and it may not be normal like it used to be, or it's painful anytime we go through that, but they may have, and I remember the Miami Dolphins, they laid out like a little blueprint of what the season could look like, and one of their recommendations that they were looking at doing was loading the stadium at slotted times depending on what section you sat in. So it's going to be a little complicated to do that, but that's something that we could be looking at. It could be sections 134, 136, load at 12:10. They get the people in, and then it's the next phase that comes in. So that could be something that we're dealing with as we go in. And it could be mandatory masks, which at this point we're so used to it anyway. Whatever, we'll just wear the mask and go in. As far as the game goes, what's the food and the drinking? I mean, if you got the mask on, how are you going to eat and drink your food in your seats? So there could be some limitations there as well. I mean, it might mean that there's no drinking or eating in your seats, that you need to do that prior to entering your section and sitting down. And that would really be painful and be a struggle as well. And then if it's hot out, which it is early in the season, you still need to be hydrated, and it's just going to be weird thinking about that. Then actually we've got the game, and Raven Stadium is a little over 70,000 people. If they were to limit the occupancy, and I didn't measure the seats, I don't know how many seats it would be, but just say like if you had to, every 3 seats had to be open between the people that were sitting there, unless you're family, and I don't know if they would waive that if you're family, then you could cram together. But just say, for example, if you were to shave that down, then you're looking at a stadium with like 17,000 people in it. That is going to be awkward. It's not really going to be as fun, but I mean, I'd be one of the 17,000 right away to go. So that could be strange if they limit the access. And then how do they go about doing that? I mean, is it a lottery? PSL owners, do they get perks first, or do they get the first available shots at those seats? And that's something that would really get confusing, and it would be a struggle to try to iron out and make it fair. And then leaving the stadium is going to be the same way. And one of the things that the Miami Dolphins recommended was church style, exiting. So it would be by row, by section. So our section's 134, start at the top, space yourself 6 feet apart, and then out you go, which would lead to a long time trying to get people out through the gates. And I would imagine they would do a couple sections at a time, but that's one of the things that the Dolphins brought up. So the good news is Bleacher Report's saying that football's on and as normal. Right here at home, and this is where things also get dicey, is you have different geographically it could be a mess over in the Midwest in some portion, and maybe like Cleveland or some other major city where they're going through a different severeness than we are. So that's something that, how does that going to play out for the big picture? If one area is struggling to stay healthy or whatever and the virus is still infecting them, how's that going to be with the Ravens and football in general? So there's a lot of things to hash out in the next couple months. Baltimore, the mayor just said no mass activities through the end of August, which just shot the preseason football, which doesn't, I'm not going to say it doesn't hurt, because it does, because I like going to the preseason games to see the young guys go out and battle. So let's see how this gets worked out. I mean, do the Ravens move that to a different facility that doesn't have that restriction? Do they go down to University of Maryland, use that stadium? Is there other college stadiums? Do they go down to the Navy Academy and try to play there so that we can watch what's going on? Or do they do it at the Castle? So those are all things that need to be ironed out, and hopefully that happens soon. And speaking of the Castle, one of the most enjoyable things we like to do is go to the camps. So that's it, folks. Leave your comments in the section below and just let us know. Do you think there's going to be football as normal? Do you think everything's going to be back to normal, or do you think it's going to be with restrictions that we're just going to have to deal with? So I appreciate hearing your feedback. Hit that subscribe button. And remember, when there's flocking news, watch Flock News.